Hello, my friends. Today, everyone is waiting for the final response to Zelensky's plan, as it will determine how the war will unfold. It's been reported that the Netherlands confirmed Ukraine can use the F-16s they provided for strikes on Russian territory. The Netherlands confirmed that Ukraine can use the provided F-16s for strikes on Russian territory. International law doesn't stop at the border or 100 kilometers from it, so we allow Ukraine to use the F-16s for self-defense, said Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans. However, there is a small problem. The missiles needed for these strikes are in the US and Germany, and neither country is given permission for strikes on Russia, creating a bit of a deadlock. On another note, NATO Secretary General said they will do everything possible to ensure Ukraine becomes a member of the alliance.
Президенте Зеленський, шановний Володимире, я дуже радий бачити вас тут, у штаб-квартирі НАТО. Я з нетерпінням чекаю того дня, коли Україна буде тут як член Альянсу. А до того часу ми і надалі робитимемо все можливе для того, щоб Україна перемогла. Це життєво важливо для нашої спільної безпеки.
Overall, we're left waiting, but Zelensky's plan could be seriously altered if Trump wins the election. Trump keeps saying that Ukraine is destroyed and that continuing the war makes no sense.
I think Zelensky is one of the greatest salesmen I've ever seen. Every time he comes in, we give him $100 billion. Who else got that kind of money in history? There's never been. Mm. And that doesn't mean I don't want to help him, because I feel very badly for those people. But he should never have let that war start. That war's a loser.
So it's highly likely that if Trump becomes president, US support will stop. But whether that means the war will end is still a big question. Zelensky is focused on strengthening Ukraine and defeating Russia, with the idea that territories will be returned diplomatically. What do you think about this? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. It's also worth noting that Orban made a statement regarding Zelensky's victory plan, saying he was horrified by it and urging the European Union to negotiate with Russia. President Zelensky presents his victory plan. What was written in the Ukrainian parliament yesterday is more than alarming. I'm one of those calling on the European Union to change its current strategy. The European Union entered this war with a poorly organized, poorly executed strategy based on bad calculations, primarily the responsibility of the Commission's president's wife. We're losing this war, so the strategy isn't working. We need to change something. But this doesn't mean we need more wars, more dangerous and long-range weapons. We need to pursue a strategy of peace, not war. We need a ceasefire and peace talks. Today, I urge the Chancellor of Germany and the President of France on behalf of the entire European Union to begin negotiations with the Russians as soon as possible to find a way out. As we can see, Orban, who is aligned with pro-Russian views, is calling for negotiations driven by fears that Ukraine may be allowed to strike Russian territory, and this could lead to significant internal problems in Russia, and they urgently want to negotiate to prevent this from happening. However, we must await the final response from our partners regarding the victory plan. Zelensky directly stated that partners should already prepare their troops to replace the Ukrainian armed forces on the front line.
Наш посил всім країнам. Споряджайте бригади, вони можуть бути резервом і можуть замінити наших хлопців, які втомилися. Вони можуть замінити їх на полі бою. Ось в чому нам потрібні ці резерви. І дуже добре навчені і споряджені. Ось такий сигнал.
Meanwhile, the Russians continue their advances. Let's start with the situation in the Kursk, direction, official reports haven't confirmed new Russian advancements yet, but there is a possibility of a gradual movement. If we look at other cartographers and geolocations, we can see that the northern part, particularly the area around the village of Kremanne, has almost been cut off by the Russians. In the past few days, there have been slight changes in this area. The Russians posted a video showing the destruction of a Ukrainian tank, but there is no official confirmation that they've advanced here. So we wait for further updates. Zelensky stated that according to intelligence reports, North Korea is preparing to send 10,000 soldiers to Ukraine. According to our intelligence, North Korea has sent tactical personnel and officers to the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. President Zelensky announced during a joint briefing with NATO Secretary General Rutte. This clearly shows that Russia is struggling and is now heavily involving North Korea in the war. In the Kharkiv direction, unfortunately, Ukrainian forces haven't yet made further advances near the village of Zhuravlivka in the Belgorod region. There has been no recorded activity in this area so far. Meanwhile, the Russians continue the offensive actions near the village of Staritsa, but they haven't achieved success and the front line remains unchanged over the past day. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are moving closer to Kucherivka and the situation there remains dire. In recent days, Russian forces have attempted to break through directly to Kupiansk, signaling that we could soon see changes along the front line. The gray zone is expanding significantly, with the Russians advancing approximately 3 kilometers from the current front line. Additionally, there are continued attempts to break through to Kurlyakivka, and shelling is ongoing in Kivsharivka. To the south, around Krugliakivka, no significant activity has been recorded, but the Russians have begun another regrouping, and for now, the front line remains unchanged. In the Burova direction, the Russians continue their assaults on Lozova and Vishneva. They are also shelling the frontline areas, but haven't achieved any new successes. Further south, in the Hrekivka and Druzhelyubivka areas, attacks have been subsided. However, they are advancing from the village of Makiyivka across the fields. Though activity remains low and the front line hasn't changed in the past day. In the Krymina direction, the Russians are attempting to storm Novolyubimivka with ongoing battles for Toretsk, and they continue the offensive operations in the Serebryanka forest. Additionally, Liman is still being shelled, but no changes have been recorded on the front line over the past day. In the Siversk direction, the Russians continue to shell Siversk and other frontline villages, but they haven't yet launched any new offensive actions. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the Russians are still trying to break through via the canal, but the Ukrainian forces are not allowing them to gain a foothold on the city's outskirts, so the front line remains unchanged. Similarly, Russian attacks on Stupochka have been unsuccessful, with Ukrainian forces repelling all assaults. In the Toretsk direction, the fighting for the city remains intense. The Russians continue the offensive actions and heavily shelled the city, but the Ukrainian forces are fiercely defending every meter of land. As of the past 24 hours, the front line hasn't changed. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians are assaulting Promen, but they still cannot advance onto the outskirts of Mirnograd directly. Instead, they are trying to break through from the east. The assaults on Solidovo continue from multiple sides as the Russians attempt to enter the city. However, the Ukrainian forces have been able to repel even mechanized assaults with no changes along the front line in the past 24 hours. In the Tsukurene area, fighting continues as the Russians attempt to advance along the railway towards Voznesenka. They are also assaulting Novoselidivka and Yernik, but there have been no significant changes in these areas as well. In the Kurakhove area, the situation is extremely difficult. The Russian Ministry of Defense has confirmed the capture of Maksymilianivka, and the Ukrainian armed forces report that not all of their fighters were able to retreat. So the capture of this settlement has been confirmed on the map, and unfortunately, with the loss of territory, we're losing people. Now, the battles for Kurakhove itself are expected to begin, and today the Russians are conducting intense artillery preparation in the city ahead of the assaults. In the Vuhledar direction, the Russians are assaulting Bogoyavlenka and Novoukrainka while also making breakthroughs near Vodene and Zolota Neva. Despite the large number of shelling reported in these areas, there have been no new advances along the front line. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians continue the attempts to break through to Malatokmachka, but activity remains minimal and there are no changes along the front line. In the Kherson direction, the Russians are still trying to periodically break through to the islands and are shelling Kherson. However, there have been no changes here either, and the activity remains low. It seems that the Russians' actions are focused mainly on keeping Ukrainian forces occupied on this part of the front. Meanwhile, Lukashenko is seeking attention again, stating that there should be no negotiations without Belarus.
Возьмите Украину. Я уже публично, может, и зря сказал, я всегда настаивал, и украинцам говорю об этом, и россиянам Путина предупредил, что на переговорах по Украине должны присутствовать белорусы. Почему? Потому что это наша проблема. Я не хочу, чтобы там решались вопросы, наши вопросы без нас.
За нашей спиной.
Да, за нашей спиной. Да, они там не оттяпают до Гомеля по лесе. Не в этом дело. Но они могут принять такие решения, что завтра половину страны придется отдать. Они сейчас целые схемы рисуют, марафон открывая, об этом говорил. Они делают все, Лукашенко, нет, он там не должен быть. Они все делают с подачей наших безумных, беглых этих лохушек и прочих, которые сидят за границей, для того, чтобы не допустить Беларусь к решению вопросов. Это они публично говорят, да вот мы тут такие демократию хотим. Пусть подохнут эти белорусы вместе с Лукашенком. Им такие белорусы не нужны. Им нужны продажные, которые везде сдадут свои позиции, свои интересы. И нас к этому не пускают. Это одна важнейшая задача. Не допустить Беларуси, особенно Лукашенко, в переговорах быть не должно. А почему? Потому что Лукашенко не сломишь, не наклонишь, извини за нескромность. Он будет отстаивать свои интересы. А там не должно быть интересов в Беларуси. Надо жить в будущем, и надо в этой ситуации выжить.
Friends, feel free to share your thoughts on this in the comments. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.